Like, what do you do to get all of this?
I am telling you, you do not know this guy.
Vanya?
Anora follows a sex worker from Brooklyn who gets a chance at a Cinderella story when she meets and marries the son of an oligarch. Once the news reaches Russia, her fairy tale is threatened as the family set out to New York to get the marriage annulled. So look, man, when it comes to Anora, this is one of those films that got a lot of buzz. I had a lot of people saying this is one of, if not the best film of the year, with one of the best performances of the year, one of Sean Baker's best films. And look, as we'll get into in my discussion today, I might be in the minority with this film, but we'll discuss that and much more in today's spoiler-free review of Anora. But first, let's get the conversations going in the comments below. Let me know if this is a film you all were looking forward to checking out. But more importantly, once you've seen Anora, let's talk about it. What worked, what didn't work, what you think about the direction, the story, the performances. Do you believe this is one of the best films of the year? Do you believe this is one of the best performances? Let's talk about it all in the comments below. Look, I will admit, when it comes to this movie, and I don't like to do this, but I allowed the hype train to get into my head in preparation for this movie. And I will be honest, this has been a few nights ago. I was a bit underwhelmed when I initially saw the film because I was expecting to have this like out-of-body experience, to be completely floored by this movie, and it just didn't hit me the way I wanted it to. Again, I felt underwhelmed initially watching it, but again, that was a few nights ago. I thought it over. Here we are talking about it, and let's break it down, man. Starting off with the positives, talking about the writer, the editor, and director, Sean Baker. To me, Sean Baker is a director that likes to allow scenes to have this chaotic nature to it and make things feel very natural within the moment, even if they're like over the top, insane, or unorthodox. Even where there's scenes of characters yelling over each other or talking over each other, there is still complete control that he has in those moments to tell his story that he's trying to convey within those scenes. And Anora is no different. There's just a freedom in his films and a level of curiosity with his characters that he chooses to focus on. Now, whether that be an ex-porn star or a street girl or a stripper or a sex worker, he never feels like he's exploiting their lifestyle or their career choices, but instead he's looking inward. He's looking at these characters as people that have trials and tribulations just like everyone else, and they have their own desires and their wants, and they make good decisions and they make bad decisions, and he just expresses the human experience with so much profound feelings. I would describe Sean Baker as a person that wants to explore interesting people that find themselves in difficult situations. Now, to me, I think Anora is Sean Baker's funniest film to date. Now, I haven't seen all his movies, like all his short films, but I saw Tangerine, I saw The Florida Project, which I do still think is his best film. I saw Red Rocket, and of course I saw Anora, and this movie just had me in stitches. Like, this movie is hilarious, like unexpectedly funny, and it's entertaining, and I think that he is just one of the most interesting directors working in Hollywood that finds interesting characters, like I mentioned earlier. And again, I don't think this is his best film for me, but I still have to applaud his efforts in telling this very entertaining yet dramatic at times movie. Now, briefly speaking on the tone in this film, I really enjoyed the sense of the whimsical fantasy that the first act displayed. It really did feel like a twisted Cinderella story, but ultimately it devolves into an exploration of harsh realities. Through Anora's journey, the film examines not only the fragility of dreams, but the societal dynamics that underpin them. Now, admittedly, I did not expect this first 30 minutes of this film to be such a party movie. Like, it is like Project X meets The Hangover, and it very much plays into this idea of like a fairy tale romance amidst the vibrant backdrop of the city lifestyle that's filled with glitz and glamour and intoxicating allure of falling in love with the lifestyle. This film is very playful at points and almost ridiculous, but in a good way, as the first act to me perfectly executes its thematic version of this sugar high that Anora experiences, and us as an audience see her day-to-day life and her day-to-day routine of being a stripper and this constant act or this character that she plays with her various clients. And even with her time with Ivan, there's this feeling that she's almost wearing Annie, which is the name she prefers, as a mask. You know, for me, when I think about it, I think the first act is probably my favorite. Like, it is so dramatically different from Act 2 and Act 3 because it is so playful. It has just like very chaotic energy that I very much enjoy. But we'll talk about Act 2 and 3 in a little bit, but I want to pivot into talking to these wonderful performances that we have in this film. I really thought that the second lead of this film, Mark Eydelshteyn, or as many people are calling him, the Russian Timothy Chalamet, Mark Mark plays a rich, innocent, carefree, somewhat charming, childish brat perfectly, and I thought his chemistry with Mikey really fit for what the story was going for. Now, I was also very impressed by Yura Borisov, who plays Igor, who plays this Russian hitchman in this film. He was the best surprise of this movie for me because I didn't expect him to be so important in the second and third act, as he provides Anora with some much needed help as the film unfolds. And honestly, the rest of the cast really did do a good job in the respective roles, no matter their screen time, but the person who has been getting all the praise and recognition, and understandably so, let's talk about this incredible career-defining performance by Mikey Madison. Mikey is sensational in this film. She's so enduring. She gets to be stubborn. She gets to be scared, vulnerable, charming. You feel for her character, but yet you get upset by her decisions at times, and Mikey just delivers everything that's required of her in this role. There's moments where she's physically required to bear it all in this movie, and just as much as the nudity that we get to see her in, we get to see her just as vulnerable when she's fully dressed, and it's just so many layers and dimensions to this wonderful performance. Whether it's the accent or the charisma or the swagger she exudes, there is no doubt that this is again a career-defining performance. I loved her in Scream. I loved her in her small little cameo in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but this is a fantastic performance, and a lot of people out there are saying that this will get her a nomination and can possibly win Best Actress, and honestly, I wouldn't be mad at it because again, she gives an exceptional performance in this movie. Now, from a productional side, the film looked great. I thought the score and the soundtrack was very engaging and kept you going along with this crazy ride. And I also appreciate the silent moments in this film, and the atmosphere, the wintry time of the year plays into the film because the film gets colder as it goes along, literally and metaphorically. And before we get into some of my criticisms, I gotta mention this, that I appreciate this film not being afraid to be sexy and to not be afraid to show sexual scenes and to show nudity, because we're following a stripper. We see her day-to-day routine, who also happens to be a sex worker. So I really do applaud this film not being scared to show those elements of this person's life. So many films seem to be so scared to explore sexual scenes, or the fact that a man shot this film and is mainly coming from a female point of view. To me, it didn't have the male gaze that often comes up when a man is writing or directing a woman. Look, again, this is a lot of nudity in this film, but I never felt like it crossed that line. It didn't feel like it was pointless. It all fit into the narrative and what they were going for. Again, just wrapping up my positives, there is definitely shades of this film being very much a modern take on Cinderella, and as many people are saying, this kind of has that Pretty Woman type of approach with an Uncut Gems type of energy, and like I mentioned earlier, it also has some Hangover comparisons as well. It is very much an unexpected funny film, but also turns into this tragic coming-of-age story about disappointment and sadness and regrets, and realizing how bad choices can lead to upsetting consequences. This movie really boils down to it being about someone looking for an adult in the room and nobody taking responsibility, or literally running from their responsibilities or handing it off to others who aren't equipped or capable of being responsible. Now, with all that being said, this is where I get into my criticisms of Anora. First and foremost, I feel like the film didn't have to almost be 2.5 hours. There are so many scenes in this film to me that just stretch on indefinitely, leaving you caught between moments of levity and impending doom, rather than fully immersing you into Anora's emotional plight. So let's actually stick with Anora for a bit, because that is the weakest part of this movie for me. Not the performance, but how the character was written in a sense, right? Like, for example, there is a lack of meaningful relationships for Anora, and we really don't explore, like, okay, she's 23 years old, she seems to be very likable for the most sense, but why is she so isolated from her family? Why is she so, like, we have one friend that she interacts with, like, why is she so isolated? I just wish the film would have had a deeper exploration of her connections. To me, that would have enriched the narrative and provided a more grounded understanding of her choices. Instead, we're left with a character whose depth felt less developed, and that choice to me ultimately hindered my ability to fully empathize with her towards the most vulnerable moment towards the end of this movie. So stick with me here on my next point. The film is called Anora, right? But the character likes to go by the name of Annie. Whenever she's working, call me Annie. When she's with Ivan, call me Annie. Like, she does not like to be called Anora. There's even a point in the film when one of the characters say, "What does your name mean?" And she's like, "Oh, that doesn't mean anything. Like, in America, we don't have certain traditions." The person looks it up and he gives her a definition what her name means. But again, she's like so standoffish about using the name Anora. And that's the element of the film that I want to explore more of. Like, we get, I said it earlier, Annie's the mask. Annie's the character that she puts on when she's trying to have fun, trying to escape who she really is. And again, that's what I wanted more of. I wanted less of Annie and more of Anora. Again, it just goes back to me saying that I feel like this film needed another character, or someone like Annie's sister who is barely in the film, or the friend that we barely meet. I just think that someone could have served to help Annie in this situation, to give her a warning to not get so trapped into this allure of Ivan, which again, this just speaks to another character flaw. Like, we are presented as Annie as someone who's confident, who knows the ropes. Yes, she's young, but she's lived a lot of lives essentially, and she is so gullible by this kid who's younger than her. Like, why is she gullible? Like, what is her reasoning to really go? Like, you would have to imagine she's come across many guys who are rich, who's throwing money on her, but she doesn't marry them. So I wish the film would have explored the needs and the wants and the desires and the dreams and the aspirations to why she fell for this guy. Like, again, it just goes to the lack of the depth of the character for me. And even another example that comes to mind, there's a mention of Anora and her family, and she mentions her mom has a man in Miami, but she doesn't mention her father. Like, where is her father? Does she have an issue with men? And that's how she's able to like fall for Ivan, because maybe there's some type of familiar thing that he does that her dad did. So like little things like that comes to mind, but also little details about the person was something I wanted to explore more. Exploring her why, again, of becoming a stripper. Was it because, you know, she becomes a stripper because she wants to go to school, she wants to buy a car, she has this side gig as a sex worker? Does she have to be a sex worker to compensate for the lack of money she's making as a stripper? Again, those little things to me would have just added so much more depth to the character and just added more to what I wanted more from of this movie. Now, to transitioning into the ending of the film without spoiling anything, this is spoiler free, but I know a lot of people are saying that the ending for them is like earth-shattering, it's heartbreaking, and don't get me wrong, it is very sad. And I think for me personally, I got more from Mikey's performance, more so than what the film built to that moment. Like, I didn't feel like it built to that emotional satisfaction for me, but the performance is great, don't get me wrong. But as far as the ending is concerned, her having this moment of feeling like she's lost. She lost her golden ticket, and all she's got left is her body, on paper is compelling, but again, we don't actually spend that one-on-one time with Anora to fully hit that emotional development for me. Again, not to sound like a broken record, but if we would have had the moments of showing her dreams, her aspirations, her goals, that moment of when we see her at the end, it would have been fully realized as a character development in an arc, and I really would have felt that punch. And if we would have had those fill-in moments, this would have been solidified in my book as a top-notch movie that a lot of people are crowning it as the best movie of the year. But unfortunately, it's those little character moments that was missing that kept this from being that movie that people are hyping it up to be, at least in my humble opinion. So those are my pros, those are my cons, before I give you all my overall thoughts on my score. And if you also check out Anora, I want to take the time to thank you all for making it to this point in the video. If you've enjoyed the breakdown so far, consider hitting that like button. Also, share this video to anyone, everyone you know that might be interested in seeing this film. And also consider sticking around by subscribing to the channel. Overall, for all these missteps, for missing out on truly diving deeper into this character, which again, I thought Anora was very fascinating, but I just wanted more. I wanted to dive a little bit deeper. The film still manages to present an interesting exploration of a woman's journey amidst the seductive allure of fantasy and the harshness of consequences. When at its best, this film invites its audience to reflect on the nature of false pretenses and the reality that often betrays them when prejudging or setting unexpected expectations on those that don't deserve your best interests. In a world where aspirations collide with harsh truths, Anora's stories serve as a resident cautionary tale layered with complexities of fake love, ambition, and search for identity, wrapped in an unexpected comedy that shifts into a dramatic depiction of life and its unexpected false promises and hopes. I'm gonna give Anora a 3.8 out of 5. Again, I know I'm going to be in a minority with this one because I know a lot of people that I respect in the industry have crowned this as a masterpiece, 10 out of 10, best picture of the year. And yes, it is a great movie. So to bring it back to should you see this film, 100%. But for me, it just didn't hit those emotional depths that I wanted to. And again, it's a comedy and I enjoyed that first half. But when we transition to the more traditional dramatic moments without those more detailed character deep dives, it kept it from hitting that high peak for me. So 3.8 out of 5, and that's on the first watch. I will definitely rewatch this, and I might, now with my expectations aside and knowing what the movie actually is, I might look at it differently. But as I'm recording this, I'm giving it a 3.8 out of 5, and I do recommend you all check it out. And when you do, let's talk about it in the comments below. Even if you completely disagree, I should say, with me, let's have some conversations. What worked, what didn't work for you? Do you think Mikey Madison will get nominated? Should she win? What do you think about Sean Baker? I don't think this is his best film. I think The Florida Project is his best movie, but let me know where you put this amongst the film you've seen of his. Let's talk about it all in the comments below. Thank you all for watching this review. I have many more reviews coming soon because this is one of my favorite times of the year. Like, as I'm recording this, I just saw The Piano Lesson from Netflix that I'll be talking about. I just saw Heretic, so I have a lot more stuff coming for you all. So if you haven't already, hit that bell notification so you don't miss out on all my future reviews. Don't forget, you all are awesome. Stay safe, and I'll catch you all on the next video.